Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you a review and a little bit of a demonstration of two products from Powerness. And one is the Hiker U500 portable power station, and the second is the accompanying solar panel, which is called, they call it the SolarX S120. A little bit unique in the solar panel in that it is actually 120 versus 120 watt output, making a little bit higher capacity than what most panels are in competing panels. And there are some things about the solar panel in particular that stood out to me as being, kind of unique and interesting. And so it was really that kind of attracted me to take a look at them. Obviously, at this point, I've reviewed products from a variety of different manufacturers, similar products in this vein. But there were a few things that stood out to me about that. So I've been spending now close to 2 months with both the solar panel and then also the U500 here. And so I'm going to give you some of the basic specs, things you can look up, but then also kind of my personal observations in using them, things that I like, things that I don't like quite as much. And so we'll dive into that. The first thing I will say, though, on a very positive note, is when it comes to value, these are really competitively priced. And in fact, since the time that I first looked at the price to the present, they've had either it's a sale or a price drop, and the prices have become even more competitive. And so right now you can get this, 500 watt U500, power bank system, portable power station. You can get it for only $299 US, which actually makes it cheaper than, like I've been using this Jackery unit, which is a 300 watt unit. And I really like it. It's small, it's compact, and there's certain things that I do with it, and I've been using it now for quite a long time. And so, but I will note that you can get this 500 watt unit considerably less than what you can get this 300 watt unit with current pricing. Also very competitively priced is the solar panel. And the solar panel in particular, I think, is a really strong value because it brings some extra things to the table compared to some others that I've looked at. And right now it's available for $169 US, so about 170 bucks, and it gives you a lot of bang for the buck for that money. So breaking down a few of these things, first of all, just kind of general specs. This unit right here, obviously from the name U500, it is a 500 watt unit, but with, of AC power with a maximum of 1,000 watts in peak or surge power available. It is not as small as what the Jackery 300 watt unit is, but as you can see, it is still, quite compact and easy to move around. It weighs in at 5.2 kilograms or about 11.5 pounds. And so I've kind of used these two units in a largely similar kind of way. So just to give you a quick kind of look at how I personally use units like this, I actually like to keep a unit like this in my desk at home because what I do is I have it in a cabinet to where I have it kind of just set up as my power station there. And so whether it be my phone or charging my cameras, I just can keep everything discreet and out of the way and keep a cleaner desk surface. And I've been using this unit in largely the same way, though it has a few extra capacity that we'll talk about. And so I've been using this in a similar fashion, but rather than having 300 watt maximum output, or shouldn't say maximum, it's 600 watt peak here, but 300 watt continuous power available in AC. This is a little bit larger capacity, 500 and 1,000 watts, and it has a larger 515 watt hour battery. Both of them are pure sine wave inverters, all of those typical things. Another area that's a little bit of improvement is I believe that the Jackery is rated for 500 life cycles of charge, and this is rated for 1,000. So just a little bit more capacity there in the battery, both in the size and then also its ability to be recharged. So some general observations about this. There is a lot as far as just the finish on the plastics. It almost has a bit of a soft touch, and in a few of the key areas, like for example on the handle, there's some rubberized surfaces to where as a byproduct, maybe this matters to you, maybe it doesn't matter, but a lot of the places that you touch, the touch points on here, do have a pleasing quality to them. So I do appreciate that. Now on a negative front, it has, as far as the input, the DC input, it is a proprietary 4mm, and I say proprietary, it's proprietary in the sense that it's different from all the other different units I've used from 4 or 5 brands. And so it is a smaller 4mm input. There is no Anderson style input on this. And so while as we're going to see the actual solar panel is really flexible for being used with other platforms, this is less flexible in that none of the existing solar panels I had had an input that would go into it. So I had to use the Powerness input on that. That's certainly a negative in my mind. It just kind of limits the flexibility a little bit. Now, one of the other things I noticed in terms of actually charging this unit, a few observations. Obviously, typically you can use solar if you have that available. You can use an AC adapter, and you can use a DC adapter plugging into like a car or something like that. And then also in this case, we have one of the ports here is a power delivery standard USB-C port that can be both an input and an output. And so in both cases, you can either output up to 60 watts or input up to 60 watts. And interestingly, you can use both of these at the same time. And so you can use a dual charge mode where you're charged into AC both with this and then also into a power delivery, which obviously means you have to have something sending the signal at the other side, so an adapter of some kind. But you can actually have the charging time. And that's a good thing, because if there's one thing that I'm critical of here is that this unit does not charge particularly fast. I was interested in looking at the adapter and looking on the back and pulling up the specs. I saw that this is only able to push out 72 watts, which if you're familiar at all with charging things like this, that's not super fast. And so a byproduct of that is that if you want to charge this more quickly, you want to utilize that dual input, because that allows you to essentially half the input time. So you can get 72 watts off the AC adapter and 60 watts out of the power delivery. And so obviously you're up to 132 watts total there. And that will allow you to charge it in, I think, about 2.5 hours. And so I'll throw up a graphic here quickly to show you that. So actually the fastest single charging source for this is actually the S120 solar panel. And I've seen as much as 110 watts coming into this with another unit on its readout. And that gives me just one criticism. Before we look at the solar panel itself, there is one criticism that I will throw out there, and that is that while there is a really effective readout for the output and a lot of good information on the screen, unfortunately, it just shows you that it's charging. It doesn't tell you how much power is coming into it. And where that is a little bit of a liability is that often I have used that input power to help me to optimize the placement of a solar panel to see where I'm getting the maximum solar energy. Because of not having that readout on this unit itself, it does a little bit limit that optimal placement. Now, fortunately, as we'll see when we take a look here at the solar panel itself, it actually does have an LCD readout on it, which is really unique amongst other such panels that I've used. And that does help a little bit. But unfortunately, if you're trying to set optimal position and trying to look at that, you're putting yourself into a really awkward position trying to see the readout. It'd be much easier to see it on the screen. So one criticism there. Now, I love the panel. Let's dive in and take a look why. As you can see, spring comes slow around here, but over the winter, this has been my charging area. It's the place where I get the most light, though here in Ontario, Canada, over winter. Solar is a little bit of a challenge when it comes to charging. However, it was the Powerness solar panel that in many ways was the most intriguing thing to me when the company approached me about doing a review of their products. At this point, I have reviewed similar products from quite a few companies, 4 or 5 of them at this point. And so there were some things about the solar panel that in particular stood out to me as being unique. The first of those is that, as you can see, this is a 100-watt solar panel from a competitor, and this is a 120-watt panel from Powerness. And so I was attracted both to, as you can see, the compact package there. And so the difference being is that this 100-watt panel, it is a nice, easy design. It folds out, and it's just that simple. The Powerness is a 4-panel fold-out. However, it has a great handle on it, something that the Blue Eddy panel that I reviewed before was far less robust. But also what you can see is that we have got 4 panels here rather than just 2. And so it's a little bit of a less stable platform for initially folding out, though in each one of these sections there are Velcro held kind of kickstands that come down and allow you to position it to the sun. Now, unlike what I have seen, for example, in the Blue Eddy panels, you only have one option here as far as your angle. Though you can play with it a little bit, but there's not like individualized settings that you can actually put tension on to change the angle at. However, the other thing that really stood out to me was inside the panel itself, where you have access to the various output settings. And this is what really was attractive to me. Number one, we have an actual LCD readout here. And so it gives you information about what kind of output you're putting in terms of the amps. And so that is interesting. But then also, as far as direct charging, there's a little bit more thought that's been put into that. And so number one, you have got attached, you have got a USB-C cable that allows you obviously to connect into any number of things these days and directly charge them, including cameras, which has been the main application for me, but also, of course, my iPad, for example, uses USB-C. I've heard that Apple is going to move towards, even with their phones, USB standard, but obviously if you're using any kind of product from Android, those are almost all universally USB-C. So direct charging of those type devices. And then also there's a USB-A port here that you can actually plug into. And so that was intriguing to me. And then also they have worked towards flexibility with other platforms. Now, one of my critiques that I'm going to give of the Hiker U500 is that it has a proprietary charge port here that unfortunately is not shared across any of the other platforms that I've used. So in an effort to kind of alleviate that, what they have done is given you 3 different options here for ends that you can put into various, obviously, other power stations to charge them. So it makes this particular panel really an interesting pickup. Even if you own a Blue Eddy or a Jackery or some other brand, it will be compatible with them. And frankly, this is a great panel design, and the price point on it right now, it's on sale for only 170 bucks. That is a great price for a 120 watt panel. And it is efficient, even in my kind of limited capacity here over the winter, in another power station that actually measures input. And I was able to get 110 watts, even in the winter, out of a 120 watt panel, which is pretty good efficiency. So obviously there's a lot to commend about the solar panel when it comes to the price, when it comes to the flexibility of what it can charge, and then those outputs based right on it. It's small form factor. I love it. I would take more of those in a heartbeat. Let's talk about a few more things about the Powerness unit, which I'm actually planning on using in this office in the same way that I use this one in my home office. There's a few things that I like better about this. I know I've kind of hit some of the critical points already, but one of the things I like that the Jackery doesn't have, and that is to have wireless charging. You know, when you have the appropriate input on, you set it on, it starts charging, and it actually consistently charges, which hasn't always been my experience. And so you can actually charge your phone this way, whereas I found a little more intermittent with some others. You get up to 10 watts of wireless charging on this. I've also found that because of the large capacity battery, that charging my camera and my other electronics is a much smaller hit in terms of percentage than what the Explorer 300 is. And as a byproduct, I don't have to take it out. And frankly, I haven't used this AC adapter once to charge this. Kind of the way I like to use these is I like to charge my small devices through them, and then I want to solar charge it, so I feel like I'm charging everything for free. And maybe that's just a psychological thing, but that's the way I like to use these. I just find that I don't have to take this out to charge it nearly as often. And on the positive note is that I also like the fact that you actually are getting the largest input from the solar panel, and I actually find that I feel like relative to other units, that it charges relatively fast through those means. Now, I ran my typical power test. I mean, you know, all the typical things I can do with these units, I've come to kind of recognize a standard. Here's a little chart that shows you how often you can charge phones or laptops and other things you can do. There's a few tests that I like to do to see if they can handle it. And so obviously a unit with this kind of capacity is not going to handle my big tea kettle that even like the Explorer 1000 couldn't handle. But I did try, I have a 900 watt travel kettle that I tried with that. And so things started, as you can see here with it, but it, in protecting itself, it shut down after just a few seconds. And so while that 900 watts does fall within the peak surge of 1,000 watts, this unit is obviously a little bit more sensitive for how long of time you spend near that maximum area. And so I thought it would get me long enough to get kind of over that peak surge, and then the ongoing draw would fall down maybe closer to the range. It didn't work out quite that way, and so as a byproduct, it wasn't quite as flexible for doing that. Now, when running something like a blender, depending on the draw of the blender, you can run something like that, And so again, that, there's much more of a quick spin up with the blender, and then the power usage drops. And so, but certainly moving peak power from 600 to 1,000 watt limit, or 300 to 500 watt, definitely expands the range of potential targets for it. At the end of the day, this unit has a lot going for it. There's a lot of, versatility here. A built-in LED light, which certainly helps in a power outage type situation. It has lots of ports here, including a grand total of 5 different USB ports. And frankly, those are kind of a big deal these days. You want to be able to just directly charge and things like that. And some of these have different capacities. I do appreciate the fact that not only does it have that power delivery USB port, but it also has a USB-A 3.0 that can have power output as high as 18 watts. And so there are some things I found that actually charge a little bit faster if I use that port. And so having that has also been a bit of a nicety. 2 AC ports, nothing particularly unique about that. So there is some flexibility as far as your outputs, lots of different ways to charge a lot of different things. Now, obviously, what really stands out to me is what a great value this is. At $300, this is a lot of bang for your buck, and I feel even more strongly about the $170 for the SolarX S120 solar panel, which I really, really like. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of things I'm encouraged about. There's a few areas I'd like to see improve that I've detailed here, but hopefully this will help you to make an informed buying decision, which frankly is what these type of reviews are all about. I'm Dustin Abbott, and if you'll look in the description down below, there are some buying links there, links where you can get more information, links to follow myself or Craig on social media, to become a patron, or to get channel merchandise. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and let the light in.